just doing a little Uber pool with Henry Rollins and the Rat Guy.
Which I wish I would have been there for that drive.
That's a double act, really,
Yeah,
you know. The Rat Guy's the opener, but you know half the crowd's there to see him.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Did I Do That? It's a show about the mistakes that we make on the way to making graphic design, because it's all part of the process. I am Sean Schumacher, and joining me today, a very special guest, an old friend of mine, actually maybe the oldest friend that I have in Portland. He's an illustrator, he's an art director, he's a consultant, he has an internet famous cat.
I don't know if I don't know. I feel like
You have fan art of your cat.
Yeah. There's definitely people that are, but it's not one of those like.
He doesn't have an agent. He's not going to have the grumpy cat experience of still being on things.
Partly because we never made his own account, and I also think Cheeto was not the best name looking back in terms of being a sort of unique name and marketable.
Well, he's very Cheeto-like. He's crunchy.
Yeah.
Pet
Gets
him.
stuck in your teeth.
When you pet him, you get just orange all over your hands, and you're just like, ah.
Yeah, instead of hair, you just have orange on your clothes. You can't wear black.
He's a very crumbly boy. Anyway, I'm joined by Jason Sturgill. Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me on this very stupid show.
Oldest friend.
But
curious.
it's true.
But so where would you say in terms of Kate? And because you were in the MFA
we met
thing.
basically at the same time. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I moved up to Portland many, many eons ago, and I got into the master's program up here.
Of fine art.
The Masters of Fart, which is another, if you just want to abbreviate it, that's the usual way. There's not any other way to abbreviate it.
Mofart.
Mofart. Well, that's that new museum that's opening in downtown LA, the Mofart.
Oh, that should be a Portland needs like
we
a fine
need our
art
own
museum
stupid
that's
museum.
like modern art specific.
We went totally different ways with that.
Oh no, I think that would be good. I think it would be very Portland to have a modern art museum that was called Mofart.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. I was thinking like, this is probably a trend that peaked around 2019, the Instagram museum, where it was just like a weird museum that had nothing in it, but admission was $30.
Oh.
And you would just take
That's a real thing?
Yes, this is a
It's
real
not the
thing.
color museum or the...
I don't know if the color museum is one of those, but like the museum of ice cream is kind of part of this, although that's a little bit more elaborate now.
Yeah.
God, there was one.
The color one was cool.
There's one up in Seattle that was just the most sad one that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because it was just like a room.
They make
and it
good
was
money on
$40 to get into this room.
Exactly.
I bet that is great in terms of finances, but
I feel like that's what Yayoi Kusama, all of her installations have become this like,
oh yeah,
you go to it, you put it on Instagram.
Yeah, she could be making bank from that.
And then in like her infinity rooms, the whole experience is going and being surrounded by all like that. I don't know if you saw, I might have shown you when I came back from it, but part of the installation, one of the pieces that you could interact with was they had like coloring sheets, basically. Like, I think they were in the shape of a fish, like the outline, but then you could kind of color it whatever you wanted. And so I made obviously a Cheeto fish.
Yes.
It had the Cheeto face on it. And then you would scan it in, and projected on the wall all around you was like an aquarium with these moving fish, but they were all generated from the people.
Oh, you did tell me about this. Yes. Yeah. That's very cool.
It was pretty amazing. That was the most, I think, interactive, and a lot of it was just like lights and take a photo. And but it was really cool. I mean, I recommend it to everybody that goes.
I should circle back around, though, because I remembered what we were talking about at the very beginning, how we met. So I came here for school. You also came here for school that same year.
I was in Portland. I've lived here forever. But I came to PSU for grad school. So I was in the social practice program, which was interesting. And I'm still not sure how it fits into what my whatever path is going to be. But
yeah, I think it's good for students to remember, too, that like what you go to school for can be really radically different also than what you end up doing.
My undergrad was marketing.
Yeah.
And so these first design forays, like I didn't even think of graphic design being an occupation.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, it's so funny because you hear a lot of people say that, like, oh, I didn't know graphic design was a job. But yeah, I had no sort of thought. It's weird. It's weird that people don't think that, because you look around and everything is designed and somebody must have done that.
But so we met in grad school, and I think we hadn't really talked until we went on this weird trip to a beach house.
Oh, beach trip.
Yeah. The
Oh,
beach,
that's right.
the programs booked a beach house. And when we got there, it was so foggy that you could not actually see that there was a beach or ocean or really anything.
Yeah.
You couldn't really see 10 feet in front of you. So I did not actually see the ocean that entire time.
Like I have a terrible memory, but like there's things that I remember. I think that was the first time I connected with Carmen as well.
Oh,
who was
yeah. Really
somebody
awesome
that was in the
artist.
program, and we actually came up with a project together at the beach. So he was in the MFA program in social practice and he was blind. I kind of was trying to think of like collaborations because I've always liked the idea of doing collaborations and I just don't do enough of it. But he had talked about accessibility and running into issues because I was like, how do you like come to school from like he lived across the river?
Yeah.
And I was just like, couldn't imagine. Like I'm blind in my left eye and I just can't imagine being fully blind and having to have those obstacles. After hearing about his sort of just having to deal with that, like I was like, oh, it would be interesting if I gave you a digital camera and every time that you came onto one of those obstacles, like you just take a picture.
Yeah.
He didn't necessarily know what the obstacle was and it produced some really beautiful photos.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. And
I
then
do.
And then we got the bus in the mall to display the photos. Like,
Oh, I didn't remember that part.
oh yeah, I contacted TriMet and like asked if we could borrow a bus. We parked it in the park blocks.
Oh my God.
And then I actually had them print the placards or whatever that you call them, like the advertisement.
Oh wait, I do remember this because I was on the bus at one
Yeah, I was gonna say you had to have gone. So the
Yeah.
the things that were the advertisements, we had them print as the photos and the different sort of documentation that went with that. I was looking back, I'm proud of that project.
You've done some really, really cool projects like that.
I enjoyed that part of the social practice program a lot in terms of just like doing conceptual projects that, I mean, I wish I was doing more of it now, but no, I'm just a loner person
You're a
sitting
rebel,
in my
Dottie.
sitting in my kitchen, toiling away, drawing, doodling.
Your beautiful kitchen.
My breakfast nook office.
You do beautiful work and you have a beautiful kitchen. It seems great.
Thanks.
Yeah. Welcome to Compliment Circle. This is a new segment on the podcast. Compliment Circle, where we compliment Jason.
You got to redo it so it's
I
used
know.
every episode.
It's not
I
a
guess you could
portable
just
jingle is the problem.
Replace the name every time.
I'll do that so it'll be like Compliments Corner. Welcome
Designer name goes here, TK.
to the podcast or whatever, something like that. Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Seamless is what it is.
I feel like there must be so many. I mean, maybe it's just me because I'm good at distracting people from the conversation that was at hand. And then you realize, like, how did we get from this point to this point? And,
it's best not to think about that with this
and
show.
I'm like, how does that become a coherent conversation?
Oh,
This must be the editing.
if coherence is what you're going for,
Yeah.
you will not find it here.
Yeah.
This is a dumb show. This
No.
is a dumb bad show.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. Just recently, I thought of ICQ. Did you ever use that?
Oh, yeah.
It's like a
I never
messaging
used
app.
it, but I remember it. Yeah.
Which had a flower logo.
Yeah.
Which Sarah doesn't remember. My wife doesn't remember.
Was she just straight up AOL Instant Messenger?
I feel like there was a lot of different competing things at
There
that point.
were. And like, it's kind of funny. Like AOL Instant Messenger had some legs. Like I feel like people were still using that pretty frequently when I moved up here.
Because there was integrations into like Mac.
Yeah.
Where it was like almost a Mac product or something.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's still little vestiges of it
yeah.
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
In the Messages app. But yeah, I feel like I didn't really get very many text messages until like 2013 or so.
Were you ever in a work environment where messages was just like they had it set up so you use messages as a internal communication form?
No.
So it was before you were texting with it.
Yeah.
It was but just used in that way where it was an internal.
Like a little mini Slack.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And then they got rid of that at some point, and I remember people were upset about it. But they knew what it was going to turn into, I guess.
10 competing worse platforms.
Yeah. Or just texting.
Yeah.
Because people don't have to pay for it per text anymore, mostly.
That was crazy. Like
people still do that, I guess.
People still do that.
Yeah.
You think about like when I was first on the internet, we paid by the minute for internet.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like the way to do it.
Sarah and I shared a phone. Like when cell phones came out.
How did that even work?
We shared a phone and we would like give it to each other depending. I mean, we were with each other most of the time.
Yeah.
I remember it being a thing where we would go to small like indie shows and we were the only ones with a cell phone, and it would like ring and we were like the pariahs of the show.
The symbol of everything wrong with modern life.
Exactly. And that was the time of the Palm,
Get out of here,
Palm
Wall
Pilot.
Street.
I think I had a Palm Pilot like quickly after that.
See, you got on the right train. I was on the Newton train.
Oh, yeah.
That was a train that was going to nowhere.
Oh, well, Palm Pilot, that didn't last very long either.
I don't know. I mean, that was the platform for a while.
It was crazy just thinking about it with the stylus, and gonna have all these like kids that are still in school that are like gonna have to research what these things are. They're gonna be like mysterious devices.
Yeah, so back in the day, you had like a really bad iPhone that had no phone in it, but it did have like a fax modem
and
that you could attach.
Take really good notes.
You could take really good is being generous, sort of good.
Well, and I can remember
and
if
you could sync
the stylus was like registered your handwriting.
Oh, it was graffiti. It was a special. You had to learn how to write in a special way.
Oh, that's right.
Pilot, because it was too bad to know how to register it.
Yeah.
That's got to have messed up a lot of people's handwriting.
Oh. Yeah, it's funny. There's so many things like that I'm like, I haven't thought about it forever.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's like so weird.
But like so much of it is like the Apple Pencil is just a very fancy stylus that's very expensive. And better.
Exactly. Well, and I was looking
very expensive.
Just thinking back, I mean, IRC is like one thing, but then I was also like remembering Quark Express and remembering. Do you remember the Easter egg?
No.
What?
Because I was never a Quark person. That was after my time.
Before your time?
Yeah, one of those. I became unstuck in time is the problem.
Yeah, there's an Easter egg. And so I had to look it up. I actually looked it up last night because I was like, I kind of remember there was like an alien or something, but I couldn't remember what it looked like. And it was like a key combination. If you pressed it, an alien would come out and would shoot your document or something.
What?
I can't remember what it would do. Like,
all right.
There's probably a thing on YouTube if you search and see like.
Oh, yeah. Quark 4.1 Easter egg.
I don't know if there was more than that one. That was the only one that I remember. Is it playing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very tiny alien that has fired some sort of weapon at a rectangular frame that's turned it sort of rainbow.
Yeah. I want to say it would potentially like get rid of your document or your artwork and then you had to Command Z out of it. I don't remember.
Well, I'm seeing another video now called Quark versus InDesign Alien Wars, which is the worst possible movie that you could create.
Also, now that we're talking about this, I'm having crazy flashbacks that I'm curious to look up. I remember on my PC, in college, I had a application that was like a desktop pet. It was like a dog.
Oh, sure.
That you could like throw a ball.
Yeah,
and
that was a big
thing. What was that called? Like, there's got to be.
It wasn't Bonsai Buddy, was it?
That doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah, Bonsai Buddy was, I think, the one that kind of broke that mold.
Yeah.
But there were definitely ones before that. Like, I remember, God, what was it? I think it was called Nico Cat.
It's like
which was like a virtual pet that someone had built for like early Mac. It was all black and white and really tiny.
That just lived on your desktop.
It would live in a window because I don't think the Mac system at that time had the ability to.
I mean, I think that I had it on a PC, but the dog would run all over your desktop.
Wow. Oh. I've shifted my attention back to the screen, and there was the InDesign print dialog box, which is completely unchanged from how it is today.
Oh, wow.
Had an alien just kind of take over your printing document.
Yeah.
Quark versus InDesign Alien Wars. This video promises so much with this title. It will never reach that height.
Flying toasters are
flying toasters are badass. I love those.
Yeah.
Flying toasters, if you don't know, the old computers, you actually needed to have a screensaver. Like your screen would get messed up if you didn't use one, but you had to pay for it. So there was this company called After Dark.
I didn't realize it was a separate application.
Yeah.
It
was not standard, but After Dark made screensavers. They made a lot of different packs. Like when I was growing up, we had a Simpsons one that I wish I could find more documentation of because it was just glorious. Like there was definitely like original writing for that, and the Simpsons were rendered in these gorgeous like pixel art ways that looked really good.
Yeah.
But like their big thing, the thing that made them famous was that they had a screensaver that was just like toasters at like a 45-degree angle, that isometric perspective with wings. Just old-fashioned like 50s toasters flying.
I kind of want to make a drawing of it now.
They're gorgeous. When there's like the black and white one, but the color one before they switched it to 3D, which looked terrible. But the color one is my favorite.
I need to like research all these things now that as they flood back. I think
there's more alien battles also happening as we're talking, and they're just getting dumber.
I think part of it is maybe even a segue into the work I brought. I remember those things because I'm looking at work from that time period and thinking about how I created them, because it was using Macromedia, freehand, and Microsoft Publishing, which is crazy that I use some Microsoft product to lay things out. It was funny going through trying to figure out like what is the oldest piece of graphic design-ish things that I've touched.
Yeah.
And then it was also weird for me to think like, oh, I actually did do a loosely air quotes graphic design in my undergrad, which I was studying marketing.
Yeah.
So I had no business trying to make any sort of graphic piece of work that I brought with us. So
you had not had any sort of formal art education of any kind at that stage.
So I put on all the concerts for the university. Like I was given a budget of $20,000 a year to bring people in and put on shows. And if I didn't spend it all, I lost it. And I had like a staff of volunteers who helped run the shows and stuff. And so I had a radio show with an indie sort of radio station. I feel like the beginning of gig posters was happening, and so I was really into that, and I even hired some gig poster artists to do the posters for the show when I had a budget for it. It was a good time putting all these shows together, and I could go on about like the different bands. This is how I met Modest Mouse. I met Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. Like have you ever told
the story of your Modest Mouse experience on anything?
No,
because that's kind of a wild
I don't think I have
story.
Either. And I almost brought one of those, but I didn't design that poster. That was actually a gig poster one, even though it was a super small show for like 400 people.
Yeah.
But I brought some pieces that were smaller shows, or, I mean, I'm surprised I didn't get one done for the Henry Rollins, like a gig poster.
That's the one that's sitting right on top. He's got that sort of like 19th century painting thing where no matter where you are in the room, he's looking at you.
Oh, yeah.
And he's very angry.
Very intimidating. Well, and the funniest thing, I actually have never told this story, I think, on any sort of recording of it, which I think will be interesting.
Exclusive.
Exactly. Yeah. No, this is definitely some exclusive information. You can cut that because it's weird. But
it's exclusive, everybody.
Yeah, it was a spoken word event in which he was doing pretty like heavily at the time, touring the country doing spoken word. I went to school at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington, which is the middle of nowhere, eastern Washington. Lots of snow in the winter.
Oh.
And I remember it being this crazy incident where he was flying into the Spokane airport, was supposed to, I think, take a small plane down to our university.
Oh, no.
But the flights had been canceled or something, like he couldn't take a flight. And so I had to drive to Spokane in my crappy little Saturn that I had like inherited from an uncle. Actually, I think I paid for, but they...
You always end up paying for a Saturn one way or another.
It's such a weird car.
What if we made a car entirely out of plastic?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Weird,
so
it's bad.
Yeah, and so I'm driving that in this insane snowstorm.
Oh my God.
And I can't even remember how...
That's like a one-wheel drive car.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember how like...
traction,
I think it's like an hour-long drive. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a decent amount of time. I get to the airport and he's waiting outside in a t-shirt and like pants that are, I think, were ripped or like very just like...
His uniform.
Yeah, like not prepared for a snowstorm.
How long had he been standing outside like this?
I don't know. That's a good question. I wish I had more, like, better documentation.
Maybe he's just one
period.
of those guys that's just like, oh, yeah, I need to cool off.
Yeah.
Let me just dip myself into the cold air. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and he probably could withstand most things, but he...
There's only one way to find out.
Yeah, so he gets in the car and we're driving back to Pullman, and we're already, I think at that point, already noticing like we're late. The performance is gonna like...
Oh God, it's this close?
Yeah, it was that
day.
And we're driving, and then all of a sudden my windshield wipers freeze off of the windshield. It was so cold and icy, and we had to like pull over and get out, and he gets out with me and is like, I just remember having this like, this is so surreal. Henry Rollins is standing on the other side of my car and we're in a snowstorm and we're scraping the ice off of my windshield wipers. And I'm like, this is like a once in a life. Like, I don't even know. Like, it still doesn't seem real to me. But
I mean,
I was kind of like, never like continued listening to him. It would be amazing if he somehow worked it into one of his shows, because it was definitely like material that he could have used, and there's more than that. So we get to the university. I had to introduce him to a huge ballroom of people that had been waiting. I can't remember how late we were.
So you're like getting out of the car and you're straight into the auditorium.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm not like a talk in front of people person, let alone like
how many people do you think were there?
There was probably, I want to say around 1,000.
Jesus.
1,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had to introduce him, and I told a little mini story of like why we were late. Did his performance, was great. Then the next day, I remember I like went to class, came back from class, and I had a message. The weirdest thing is I think I had my phone somehow hooked up to my computer. And so I had like answering machine on my computer, and it was a message from Henry saying, "Hey, Jason, it's Henry. I'm stuck here at the airport." And he needed to go. I can't remember what the deal was.
He's just getting like screwed by this airport over and over again.
Asking for a ride. I later found out through like, I think it was his management, because I don't think I talked to him again. There was like somebody that was also stuck with him that was transporting like rats that were like to be experimented on. And
what even?
And that guy gave him a ride. Well, and I mean, the university is like an ag school, so there was all sorts of like crazy animal, I think, experiments going on, as far as I know.
Just doing a little Uber pool with Henry Rollins and the rat guy.
Which I wish I would have been there for that drive.
That's a double act, really, you know. The rat guy's the opener, but you know half the crowd's there to see him.
Yeah. So the poster from that,
Which looks, honestly, knowing that you didn't know anything about design, looks pretty good.
It was funny because I can see the inkling of like, okay, this is maybe a field I should go into because I have some natural instincts. So to describe the piece, a giant photo of Henry Rollins that takes up 3/4 of the page.
Yeah. Henry Rollins is on a black background, and then there's just a paper white on the right. And the type is super heavy, but it's crossing over the boundary. And so like Henry Rollins, that text is white when it's over his photo, but black on the other side. And like, that's a complex thing to do.
Yeah. With whatever
with
the
a
software,
photo, especially. Yeah.
And just trying to think of how I made the decisions of like what actually crossed over. Because part of it is like there's type just clearly on one side and it's broken up.
Yeah.
But then some of it's the words go over.
Like what that allows you is there's a really clear sense of hierarchy. Like that November 21st, that's an important thing. And it's really singing reversed out like that. You've created so much tension just by splitting it. And then to have that type crossing over sometimes like creates so much more tension, stretching that type. You have a couple other posters here too.
Yeah. So these are all from that period. So we had a couple different venues. We had the ballroom area that the Henry Rollins event was, and that's where Foo Fighters and Ween played. But a lot of the shows were in the Butch's Den, which was in the basement. And
that's a terrible name.
Explain that the mascot for Washington State University, which is Cougar. God. I mean, you can tell I'm not one of those people that are diehard. Like
you're not
sports.
A citizen of Cougar Town. It sounds like.
But so the mascot's name was Butch. So Butch's Den, and it was like a
Butch's Den. Oh no!
Yeah, Den.
Oh.
So it
less dramatic.
Does it say Butch's Den?
Yeah, Butch's Den.
Much smaller venue, like a couple hundred people. So this one's interesting. You can go ahead and describe it.
Yeah, so the top says Friday the 13th, Dead Week. All ages rock show. Pond with special guests. Enlist. And vehicle. 8 p.m. Butch's Den. Basement of Cub. $5 at the door. Brought to you by ASWSU Entertainment. Having a W in there really kind of throws the rhythm off, and so many S's.
Associated Students of Washington State University. I think that's what it was.
It's important to know that they're associated.
Which is funny because it was called just the entertainment committee is what we would call it. Do you want to describe what's going on?
So
with
you've
the type?
got, this is extremely bold type, sort of the opposite hierarchically of what was going on with the Henry Rollins poster. Other than like Pond, Enlist, and Vehicle are all very large.
The bands are definitely the feature.
Yeah, it should be noted also that Enlist is spelled I-N, like LinkedIn. Maybe that's what they became. They became LinkedIn.
Yeah, there's another band, Vehicle, which was a Portland band. Its claim to fame, which I don't think a lot of people in Portland know, that Andy Ricker of Pock Pock fame used to play music, and he was in this band called Vehicle. He was...
Oh, wild.
Yeah, he was the bass player, and I still, to this day, think it's a great record. I think it's on Spotify and all of the different platforms, Apple Music, whatever. And if you don't know, Andy Ricker is a restaurateur who has been like covered by Vice and all of these major...
I think he's a national...
International.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, known. And I think at the time he was painting houses and then he was in the band.
The traditional Portland just kind of doing everything all at once.
And the great thing also, speaking of design and promotion, the reason why I booked them, because I don't think I had heard of them at the time. They're like really small. I don't think they even toured a lot from what I remember. So I would get promos from record labels all the time of like, we want this band to play here. You're always talking to like managers or people like that wanted us to have their bands. And they sent a kit, like a box of probably a cassette along with some incense and one of those mini bottles of whiskey. Which is now, remembering back, is kind of crazy to think that they sent alcohol through the mail like that.
Yeah, had a real optimistic sense of who would receive that.
Also, I don't think I was 21 at the time either. But yeah, in terms of like doing something to set yourself apart, and because I would get so many demos that I was just like not even listen to some of them.
Yeah, just like blank CD,
especially if it was like
or something.
Poorly designed something and looked like garbage. So.
Yeah, that's clearly like, no
effort.
Learn how to not smoke with the label peeled off and the tape over the little Right Protect tabs on the top.
Yep.
Yeah. So this poster also, so it's very, very bold type, fully justified as taking up the whole frame of the poster.
Which I'm still actually a fan of fully justified type.
We were talking about this with another poster, but like you see this up on a wall and it's going to draw you in because it's loud and proud. But like also all the type kind of has this sort of radiating effect coming off of it.
Which is one of the crazier parts of it. Like I'm like, I don't even know how I would have created that in whatever freehand. It's like putting a outline 50 times.
Yeah, and they're all kind of different too. Like the big type has a different amount of outline than the small type. It's not like you just selected everything and applied that. There's some variety there. Yeah. And you also have a really wonderful wavy guy going on in the background.
I want to say that's a fingerprint.
Yeah,
I don't even know why I remember that, but yeah. Which is also weird. Like, where did I come up with that? Like, to think that I was thinking conceptually in that way and what the concept actually was.
Well, it's Dead Week. So maybe you were trying to go something to connect with the human body, but also feel a little psychedelic. So we've come to the last poster here.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us actually about this, friend?
I mean, I was a big music fan. It's really shaped a lot of what I ended up doing after school. And I started a record label at this time in college because I found out I could get credit for starting a business. I always say that was my education. This was for an off-campus show. So the headliner is this band called Aiden, who I highly recommend everybody going to check out.
ADEN.
ADEN. Great indie pop. Still some of my favorite albums. So I was really excited about them playing. I have no idea how I got to do the poster or what, if I was promoting it or whatever, but it was off campus at a house at the place called the White House, which I love the address.
I've heard of that place.
The address is 405 Paradise, which I'm like, that's all you had to put on the poster to know how to get there, I guess.
It seems like it doesn't need a name if it's just called 405 Paradise.
Like,
that's a pretty good name.
Yeah, why didn't they just call it that?
Yeah.
The White House is kind of a dumb name. But yeah, so it's a landscape with basically a silhouette of a landscape with trees in the back, and then basically what you would probably imagine is a family, and they're carrying what seems to be like a picnic basket. The major silhouette of the ground area is where I decided to put the names of the bands. So it was Aiden, Ashtray Boy, which then very random.
Ashtray Boy.
Yeah. And I have like to the right of those names, I have arrows pointing from
arrows.
I have arrows pointing to the band names with a starburst to the right of that says from Chicago. Illinois.
From Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
It's Arrows.
I think this is the worst design out of the three.
Well, I mean, I think this is one I think that we were talking about the most before the show. I think there's a lot of smart decisions that you make with it. Like this is a wide. This is not a tall poster. This is a wide poster.
That's true.
Which like you don't see very often, and when you do see, you take notice of.
Yeah,
because it's different.
So it was 11 by 17.
Yeah.
And then I designed it sideways.
And I always wonder too. Like I'm guessing this was probably meant to be on like telephone bowls and stuff.
I think at the school it was more like on bulletin boards.
Oh,
I think is where you would put them up, or in dorms and stuff.
that makes sense.
So yeah, the other interesting decision was that I put like the date and the location not horizontal. I don't know how would you describe it. I put it sideways.
Yeah.
So you have to turn to see that. And then below the two bigger bands, I did have a little bit of hierarchy, I would say. And then also an interesting choice, which I didn't really consider too, is like it goes from the sort of headlining band to the two local bands, two of Pullman's finest is what the Starburst says. Those are like, they go gradually from white to like a darker gray.
Yeah. Well, and I think like that's some smart hierarchy stuff going on there. But I also think like setting the date and location out like that makes it feel like it's like this frame kind of, and that like having it be different like that kind of draws you in.
And then $4 at the door, 4 bands for $4 in parentheses.
So affordable.
Yeah.
The cheapest way to visit the White House, I would say. So you also brought in some albums because you mentioned earlier you started an album.
A record label.
Record label. That's what we called it.
Yeah. So I guess before we get into those, I should say, so as I kind of briefly mentioned, actually it was sort of through... The show might have been at this place called the White House, and it wasn't a show that I organized, but it was Modest Mouse was playing.
Yeah, before they were known to anyone.
I mean, they were playing at a house.
Yeah.
Like probably to like...
the White House, though.
To like...
405 Paradise.
Maybe like 20 people or something.
Half of whom are talking to each other.
Yeah, an insane show. I remember being blown away. I don't remember if they had a record out that we were playing at the station. The show was insane. So much energy. And then at the show, I think I had already talked to my college advisor about starting a record label.
Yeah.
While I was a DJ at the station, I was really inspired by all these indie labels, and I could tell that like some of them were just sort of this one person operation.
Yeah.
And
like at that time, everything was so DIY.
So I asked Modest Mouse, I was like, would you be interested in putting out a 7-inch vinyl record single? And they said yes. I just emailed my favorite record label at the time, which was Double Agent Records. And Peter, I believe, was the guy that ran it. So then I quickly had to figure out by emailing him, find out, I use this pressing plant in Czechoslovakia to press the record. So I ended up having to email this without it. I don't believe they had a website or anything at this time. It was just
how did you discover this place?
Just through him. He was like, "This is what I use them." And I had to email them, and then I think they sent me back like a price list. I printed 500 records, and so I designed the cover with the drummer from the band, Jeremy, and he had a whole concept of what he wanted, and we kind of collaborated. We ended up screen printing a sort of a vellum paper that was translucent, so you could see.
Yeah.
The baby blue vinyl.
You didn't bring it in today. You've shown it to me in the past, and it's really pretty.
Yeah. It's funny. I wasn't thinking about being a designer or anything at the time, but packaging was really important to me. So I spent probably more money than most people did at that time for packaging, and we had it screen printed. Part of the thing was I had a baby blue shirt that I loved, and I cut a swatch of it off, mailed it to them, and said, "I want to match this color."
Oh,
which
you sacrificed your beloved shirt for this album.
And I thinking about it now, it's I had no idea what Pantones were then. I don't even know if they knew what Pantones were.
No.
Yeah, they sent it back and it looked amazing. They matched the color, but the actual label for the record was supposed to be printed in the silver color, and it was printed in black.
Oh.
And then also when I got it back, it not only that, but then I was I don't like this design of it was called Hit or Miss Records, and the logo that I made was Target with an arrow coming coming out of it. After seeing it, I was like, oh, I want to center it so that the center of the target is on the hole for the record. I was able to redesign it, and they gave me the 500 extra for free since they screwed up.
Oh.
So I had the 500 that were the way that I wanted them, that I sold at record stores and things like that. The other 500 that they gave me for free, I was like, well, now I have these records that I can use to promote the record.
Yes.
So I hired a PR company that at the time, I'm assuming they probably still have these, is like indie labels at that time.
Yeah.
These small labels would hire a PR company that would service all these small labels. And
was this something that the guy at Double Agent had told you to do? Or?
I think he had used them. I know there was this other label called March Records who I really liked. This guy named Skippy ran it, and I'm pretty sure I was in touch with him about it. So they shipped those to all the radio stations all over the country. I can't remember. I feel like it was in like music magazines for like top spins at college radio and stuff like that. It's kind of a collector's item. You can see them on eBay and stuff.
That's why.
Yeah.
That was the first album that you put out on your record label.
But then the second one, this is basically, I mean, this podcast could go on forever. I feel like you're going to have to do a lot of editing. But,
yeah, I always do.
But
it's the curse of this idea.
The interesting part that I think connects this all to the trajectory of my career was for the second record, I had read in a fanzine an interview with this band in New York who was called I Live the Life of a Movie Star Secret Hideout. Not the most marketable name in the world.
No, it sounds like maybe a couple sentences got run together there.
Not only was I a fan of the interview, they had 2 records, I think, at the time that were, I think, EPs. And Adam, the guy in the band, was a student at Cooper Union. And so was going to school for design. And actually screen printed all of these covers by hand. And they were just beautiful. Like, they're still like some of my favorite designed albums. So I put out their first album and spent extra, like more money than I should have on the packaging. Most people would do like a jewel case or whatever, which was very common. And I ended up doing this kind of a cardboard, like fold out thing. So it was like one piece of cardboard folded that was printed and then the plastic sort of
like glued onto
it. And so Adam designed this. I probably didn't have any input on it since he was the real designer, but that was transparent. So you saw the artwork behind that. And I printed, I can't remember because it was like the minimum, I want to say 1,000, but it could have even been more than that. And it didn't sell that well.
Oh no.
So
was that the death knell of...
Yeah, exactly. The biggest thing that came out of that, I think, was they got written up in Rolling Stone for the longest band name, I think, known at the time.
That's certainly been surpassed by now.
Yeah, Adam, the lead singer, is an amazing drummer. Ended up going and being a drummer for this band, Mooney Suzuki, who was really big at the time and toured with them all over the world. But then after college, he moves out to Portland. He ended up staying at my parents' house for a little bit while he tried to get jobs and figured out a place to stay. He eventually gets in at White & Kennedy, working in the studio as a designer there.
The big ad agency here in town.
Yeah. Global. Several offices. And that had been like a goal because after college, I still didn't think of design as a career. I thought of advertising seemed to be the thing that you would make money from. And so I'm like, I want to work at White & Kennedy. I want to be a creative, even though I don't have any portfolio, any sort of way to transition into that career. He was working there, and I had worked at some small agencies doing a variety of like internships and craziness, working at a telemarketing phone place for a while that I ended up quitting and just like leaving and not coming back to. Like I'm like going to lunch. I think
that's the standard way that you
going to lunch. Did not come back.
I mean, I gotta go get some cigarettes.
Exactly. And then he was like, oh, we have an opening for a junior like interactive producer. And at the time, interactive was just getting started. There wasn't a lot of people that had education in interactive, but I was like making my own website at the time or whatever. And so I had enough knowledge to like speak the language and was able to get a job there. So that was kind of the start of that. And that my story is so long and convoluted. I've been doing this for too long. I'm like too old to like condense a career down to a short podcast.
Well, it doesn't have to be like that. Should we talk about these last two?
Oh, yeah.
Because you brought in 2 CDs here. This is Dear Nora, the New Year EP.
Do you know that band?
The name sounds really familiar. I'm sure I've heard them.
So randomly,
This cover actually looks really familiar to me.
There's been a kind of a resurgence with them because there's a lot of current indie pop bands that have referenced them as inspiration, and also highly recommend all their records. But my brother-in-law was the owner of the record label that they were on.
Magic Marker Records.
Yeah, he was one of the two owners that started the label, and that's how kind of we became friends too, is we had record labels. We're into the same thing. When I moved to Portland, we connected over music and stuff. So I think I don't even know what I was designing that made them think that I could do that either. But they let me design that record.
It's
that one
really beautiful.
I think out of everything I brought, like that one is the thing that I'm like, look back and I'm like, I can stand by that.
Yeah, this is definitely like the most timeless design, but you've got like pink on the, I don't know what you call that, the spine, but it's like the front spine. And then you've got like this sort of pink strap that sort of starts to wrap around, and then it's white on the back with this black and white photo on the front and like this really beautiful like cherry blossom photo on the back.
And now that I remember it, actually, I did another record for them that I designed. I think the main thing with that one is Katie, the lead singer, provided the photos, wanted to use the photos.
It's very subtle on this one. Like, I think a lot of the other examples, you're going really loud, but like you've got just kind of this very minimal arrangement on the back. It feels very quiet in a way that feels like appropriate. And like on the album itself, which like the disc is pink. It's the same pink as my coat almost.
and now, looking back at that.
And this whoopee cushion.
Yeah, looking back at that, that was, I mean, I don't know if that was intentional in terms of me listening to music and being like, this needs to be kind of subdued, because their previous record, I think, was more up tempo, like their first record, and this was an EP. But yeah,
but you've got like the only text that's on here is just Dear Nora, really, really small, like probably like 10 point or something like that.
Yeah, no track listing on the CD or anything.
No, which is, I mean, I feel like that was like a really unusual thing in that era. It was still like just print everything on there and 12 different logos for weird technologies that don't make any sense.
But it's also just like so weird to think about me doing design when I didn't necessarily consider myself a designer.
You think this was sometime in 2001 that you made this, which like I feel like this is a very unusual aesthetic for 2001. It's like really looking forward, I feel like.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's
true.
Yeah. I stand by that one. I did a couple other things for his label, and yeah, I think that's where I maybe started coming into like, okay, I think I'm doing better at this.
Yeah.
And it was at the end of working at Wyden, which was 2004. I got cancer, and that's a whole nother story on itself. But I decided at that point that I wanted to focus on design.
Yeah.
And I went back to Clackamas Community College, took some classes, but didn't finish because at the time my wife was working at Dark Horse and there was an opportunity to be a freelance designer there. That was kind of like the official point of like, okay, I'm working in design, doing packaging and catalog design. So that was kind of my real first experience. Through working at Wyden and being friends with all the people in the design department and really wanting to work there, I think eventually one of the studio managers had left and went to work for Nike Skateboarding, and he needed some freelance help and asked if I would come in and work with them. And I mean, yeah, it's still weird to think that I worked there even. And it all seems
You've done
like
a lot of stuff.
When I talk about it, it seems like it's almost an out of body experience where I'm like, oh, I did that thing. Like, that's weird. Like, I worked on that thing, and I'm never like, I don't talk about it in a way of like, there's people that fanboy out about Nike Skateboarding, and it's not like I'm like, oh, I designed that thing or that. I don't know. It's hard for me to take credit for anything, even though I think a lot of that has to do with being a collaborative process, especially with like a large company.
Oh, I think that's a big part of it. But I think to circle back around, I think some of it also is just like we are kind of invisible as like players in so many of these projects. Like, to look at this album, like the immediate big experience that you have when you buy an album is like you are looking at the album, you are holding the album. The objectness of it is like a huge part of it. And then you have to go through a whole process to actually invoke the musical part of it that's like a whole separate component almost than what you're paying for. And like to make an experience like this is like a huge thing.
At the time, like in college, like I listened to certain labels just because they had an amazing aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like March Records at the time, Teen Beat Records, like there was all these labels that aesthetics were a big part of what their identity was.
Yeah. Jason, if people want to find you and your work on the internet, how would they go about doing that?
I think the place I would recommend at first would just be Instagram. That's where I put a lot of things and I update that the most. I update my site, I think, sort of
about as often as any graphic designer does, which is
like,
not terribly often.
When I realize that I have projects that I should put up there. I just don't know if people look at websites anymore.
Yeah,
like,
it's not so much a thing, I feel like.
I feel like people find me through Instagram.
Yeah.
But my commercial work is on my website, jasonsturgill.com. I also registered the domain JGSPDX, which is also my Instagram handle, JGSPDX, which is my first...
You've got a short URL.
Jason Garland Sturgill is my full name, so that's what JGS is, PDX. I think that forwards to... But I never tell people that. It's too convoluted.
So if you don't want to type it all the way out, you can try that JGSPDX.
I mean,
.com, I assume?
Yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise it's jasonsturgill.com.
Well, it's funny that you were, when you on Terrans, when you guys started looking up archive to see if you could pull up, because I was like, that was the first thing that I thought of.
Yeah.
Once I heard that was like, what do I pull up? And because I had a website called sinkingships.com. That was my first portfolio website.
What? Why?
And I have no idea why I had that name.
It sounds like a band name is kind of the heart of it.
There wasn't a project that I had for it. I don't know if I was thinking it's like a company name, but
yeah, just you're trying to throw some shade at
I don't even know what was on there, like, to be honest. And so I was like curious and I put it in there and it didn't save anything.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be on it.
And thank you to the listener who is listening to this, the words that I am saying. But if you enjoyed this show, why not hop onto the service that you use to listen to it and find the way in which you can leave comments and feedback and questions. I don't think you can. Stars especially, yes. If there's a venue for stars, if there's a venue for Cinemax, if there's a venue for Showtime? Is that another one? Yes. Then hop on there and leave me some stars. I'd prefer 5 of them if that's possible, unless that's a bad thing on the service that you have.
Unless it's a 10-star rating.
Yeah, if it's a 10-star rating system, don't give me 5 stars. Give me an additional, give me 5 and then an additional 5. But submit them all together. And also please leave a review, because I still only have 1 review, and that is actually something that really matters a lot.
On which platform?
On iTunes. Or whatever they call it now.
iTunes.
Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
Not as fun to say. Is it clear that I'm very old from calling it iTunes? I think it should be. The other thing that you can do that would be super, super helpful is tell a friend about this show, whether they're a designer or not, because, you know, this is the kind of show that I feel like would be a good introduction, or maybe a terrible introduction. Who knows? You can also follow us on various services. I would encourage you to go to our website, dididothat.design, where you can get all those good links. Now, I am Sean Schumacher, and this is Did I Do That? And as we always say at the end of the show, yo, 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 yo. That's what we always say. Okay, thank you. Bye.
It's so funny to think about the different tech that we lived through that a lot of people kind of forgot about, or you don't think about it at all in terms of, like, I mean, they are reintroducing LimeWire or whatever.
What, really?
Yeah, somebody bought it and they're making, like, turning it into like an NFT distribution platform or something. It just sounds awful.
It was originally for stealing, so returning it to stealing feels like
exactly
the most appropriate use, I guess.
One of his friends' mom runs the roller derby, and tonight's their season opener.
Oh.
And so he is going, and with his friends are going to have a job of watching out for the Portland Pickles mascot who's going to be there because they're a sponsor or something. Yeah.
What happens if they find him?
Well, they're there to protect him,
Protect him from the
like
roller derby?
I think also not necessarily protect him, but like just being aware, like helping them in their weird costume.
Just running interference, kind of.
Or she's just saying that to make them think that they're doing something and making them feel important.
Yeah, we need to distract the children in some way. Yeah, you're in charge of the pickle mascot guy. Yeah, sure, exactly. Why not? And you're in charge of that light switch.
Yeah.
You got to watch it. Make sure nobody turns it on or off.
Yeah.